हरिहन्तानं नमो सेदानं नमो अयरियानं नमो वजायानं नमो लोये सवसाहुनं येसो पञ्चनमोकारो सर्वपापपनाशनो मङ्गलानं चेसदेशं परमं हवै मङ्गलम् परमं हवै मङ्गलम् நீராறும் கடலுடுத்த நிலமடந்த கெழிலொழுகும் சீராரும் வதனமெட திகழ்வரத கண்டமெதில் தெக்கனமும் அதிசிறந்த திராவிடன திருநாடும் தக்க சிறு பிறையுடலும் கரிதனரும் திலகமுமே அத்திலக வாசனை போல் அனைத்துலகும் இன்பமுற எத்திசையும் புகழ் மணக்க இருந்த பெரும் தமிழனங்கே தமிழனங்கே சீரிழமை திரும்பியந்து செயல் மறந்து வாழ்த்ததுமே வாழ்த்ததுமே வாழ்த்ததுமே.
We have with us Dr. K.S. Aramalartha Nayagi to discuss on do's and don'ts of writing a journal paper. She has completed her UG and PG from Sadakaptullah Appa College, Tirunelveli, and she has secured 30th rank in university in UG and first rank in PG. She has cleared her UGC NET during 2006. She has completed her MPhil and PhD from Manonmaniam Sundarnar University, Tirunelveli. She has 15 years of experience in teaching higher education. She has attended various seminars, FDP and conferences, and she has also organized many FDP as a coordinator of ICT Academy and as a head of the department She has presented more than 20 papers in various conferences. She has many UGC and Scopus publications for her credit. She is involved in research from her undergraduation. She has been guiding undergraduate level students for their research projects. Thank you so much, Aram ma'am, for accepting our invitation and being a resource person today. And over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, ma'am. Ma'am, hope my screen is shared.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So before starting my session, I would like to thank our Associate Secretary, beloved Principal Ma'am, Vice Principal Ma'am, and our Research Director, Dr. S. Deepa Ma'am, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share my thoughts on the topic, the do's and don'ts of writing research paper. So before getting into this session, I thought, or according to me, I consider research a story. So a story can be narrated differently by each and every individual. So based on the understanding of an individual, a story can be narrated differently. In same way, a research can also be understood and narrated in different way on the basis of the understanding by the researcher. Though the way of narration may be different, there are certain things need to be considered at all levels by all the researcher. So with this in my mind, I thought of sharing some of the do's and don'ts I consider at all levels and all chapters in a research paper. So having all these in my mind, I have planned today's session to have the following flow. And based on the researcher's point of view, based on the research subject, the research topic, there may be some additions or the subtractions with the points which I'm going to present today. So as I said, research is a story. So what a research paper can be? A research paper can be a solution to a problem which was taken by the researcher. It can be some
Ma'am,
extension to, ma'am,
sorry, your slide is not moving, ma'am. To the
1
next.
minute. Ma'am, whether it is in session flow now?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So to have 2 or 3 points on research paper as my first slide, and to have a comparison between research paper and a journal paper, to consider some of the do's and don'ts in topic identification, in abstract writing, in literature review, in choosing methodology, data collection, and in writing result. Ma'am, is that visible now?
Yeah, your slide research paper is shown now,
Research
ma'am.
paper. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So research paper is a complete report of what the researcher has done. It may be a finding solution for a problem. It may be about the human behavior which was studied by the researcher. It may be some extension to what the previous researcher had done so far on the same topic. So a research paper should give some results based on the topic which was chosen by the researcher. So research paper and journal paper is different. So how it is different, or on what basis we can differentiate it? So I consider, on the basis of the definition, research paper is completely descriptive and it is specifically described on the topic which was chosen by the researcher. A journal paper is a periodical publication which can be on the basis of the current academic trend. On the topic involved, a research paper comprises the content which is only relevant to the topic chosen. A journal paper will also include some of the topics which are interlinked to the topic selected. The objective of a research paper is to convey the subject matter to the readers. A journal paper is developed to make some awareness about the current topics on the specific domain. Probably the research paper is considering a particular topic and it consider most of the research process. It is lengthy when compared to journal paper. Journal paper will have a limit up to 6,000 to 7,000 words, but a research paper is a long work which will be having or taking a long period and to have it complete. So now moving on to the actual topic which I have chosen today. The first area or the first chapter which I took is topic selection. Topic selection is the area where the researcher has to concentrate, and this is where the researcher's real research will move on. So topic selection should be taken care by the researcher based on the various points which were listed here. The researcher's own area of interest need to be considered first, and the problem which is taken into for the purpose of study should be understood and should be dealt with by the researcher to find some solution. The recent trend on the topic which were chosen by the researcher should also be considered. Unexplored areas can be considered by the researcher for the purpose of conducting the research. So discussion with the supervisors, the expert on the area will definitely help the researcher to have a good topic selection. So while choosing the topic, these are some of the points that the researcher have it in mind. Though the topic may be very fascinating, if the data cannot be collected, choosing the topic is completely a flaw. So the researcher has to consider whether the possibility of data is there in the topic selected. And the topic should not be too narrow. So it should be very easy to understand for him, and the area of interest for the researcher should be considered. The topic selected should make the researcher to move further in collecting the data, in analyzing the data, and to infer some results. So with the do's and don'ts, what we discussed, a good research topic should be relevant, feasible, avoid duplication, and applicable. If all these characters were fulfilled by a research paper, then a topic is said to be a good topic. The next chapter where the do's and don'ts are to be considered are while writing an abstract. An abstract is the condensed version of the longer work which was done by the researcher. An abstract will give its readers the complete information about the research, what the research is all about, and how the research is carried on by the researcher. So an abstract should be giving all the information. So by reading an abstract, the reader will understand what the complete research paper is all about. So an abstract highlights the major points covered, describe the content, the scope of the work must also be mentioned in the abstract. While writing the abstract, some of the do's and don'ts were. So abstract writing, as I said, it gives the complete information about the research work. It should give the context, the background of the study. It should state the problem which is being addressed in the research paper. It should give the reviews. The complete review need not be given. The important review which help the researcher to move further or move forward, that should be mentioned. Some of the reviews that will help the researcher to have a better understanding in the topic. So from those reviews, an important one or two review can be mentioned in the abstract. The purpose of the research must be clearly mentioned in the abstract. The methods which were used for the purpose of analysis, and the few findings which are very important in the research can also be mentioned in the abstract. While writing an abstract, the jargons should not be used. So people who are reading the abstract should understand easily. So jargon should be avoided. The words like could not, did not can also be avoided while writing an abstract. The personal opinion or the judgments made by the researcher should be avoided while writing an abstract. And always use an active voice rather than using passive voice. It will give the readers an impact, and it will deliver what the researcher is willing to do or what the researcher has given in the complete research report. So with the do's and don'ts, what we see today, the abstract will tell the reader what the researcher did, why the researcher did it, how the researcher did it, what researcher found, and for what it is meant for. So if an abstract can give answers for all these questions, an abstract is a good one. So while framing an abstract, do find answer for all these questions and then submit your abstract. The next chapter I take into consideration is a literature review. So literature review is one such a chapter where the researchers spend most of the time. Whatever literature that comes to our table will be reviewed by us, and we will be taking long time in reviewing each and every literature. So while doing this literature review, these are the points that need to be considered. So can always consider the viewpoint, the main topic, the main purpose of the research, and get into the literature review. So defining the viewpoint should be there in our literature review. Whenever a literature is taken into consideration for reviewing, please do check whether it is defining or it is telling us what the purpose of our research is and whether it is matching with the requirement. Focus on the time and energy you are spending on the literature, each and every literature. Some important literature which is giving us lead to our research needs to be given more time. So while doing literature review, focus on time, the energy you are spending on it. Do also have some recent papers that will help us to give some references to our research papers. So all the past reviews can have some limitation and consider the recent papers also. So recent papers which are very unique in nature and that are relevant to our research should be considered and should also be a part of our literature review. So while doing literature review, do not, we will be having different thoughts at different stages. When we getting into the deep review of different literature, we may have different thoughts. So at times we will be getting irritated, we will be changing everything from the initial stage. So don't be discouraged when your literature review is making you irritated. So keep changing it as and when required. If you change it at this stage, it will be helpful for you to move your research into a proper way. And do not summarize all the literature which you have come across. So the important literature review, which is very relevant, which has made your research move forward or helped your research in different ways, to take those literature alone into consideration and mark all those literature review in your research papers. So a good literature should be very selective, it should be strategic, and it should be purposeful. So a literature that is helping your research should only be taken. So if your review is very selective and strategic, probably your time which is spent on literature review will not be more. So the next part which need some care is choosing methodology. So research paper will definitely have a methodology. Methodology is a chapter where the complete research work of the researcher will be defined. So the methodology will have the method which is used by the researcher, how the results were drawn by the researcher, and this is where it is giving space for the future researchers also to do the research. So the researcher will definitely check what we have evaluated, and this methodology will have more space for the future researchers to understand the research and to make some additions to it. So it needs to be prepared, planned by the researcher. So the experiment which were used, the way the evaluation is done, how the data were collected, everything need to be given by the researcher in this stage. So choosing methodology, writing it needs to be taken care by the researcher. Whether slides are on.
Ma'am, your voice got lost. Yeah, ma'am.
Any slide, ma'am?
Yes, now you are audible, ma'am. Yes.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So some of the do's in methodology. So while writing the research methodology, kindly outline all the research methods that you have used in your research paper. Clearly define the methods and give it in a logical way. Whenever you are mentioning the results in the methodology and when you are mentioning the various methods you are using it, kindly look into the order of mentioning it. So the order of mentioning the methodology and the results drawn by various methods should be matching with each other. So here the variables which were taken into for the purpose of study should be clearly mentioned. The variables that are dependent, that are independent, that are variables which are extraneous in nature or need to be well defined in the methodology. The test, the statistical tools which were used by the researchers should be mentioned in the methodology clearly. The levels of significance fixed, the software, and the other techniques which were used for the purpose of conducting the research should be clearly mentioned in the research methodology chapter. While writing the methodology chapter, the researcher should avoid usage of words. Rather than using the words, tables, figures, numbers can be represented wherever necessary. So numbers can speak more than words. So the researcher can focus on using numbers rather than using the words. And the detailed experiment which were already explained by the previous researcher and which is very commonly used by all the researcher need not much explanation in the research. So such kind of experiments and such kind of explanations can be avoided. So very unique presentation, very unique techniques that were used in the research can be definitely shown. So unnecessary details and which are irrelevant to the research papers can be avoided while writing the methodology chapters. So with this do's and don'ts, how a methodology can be formatted or how it should be, some tips for you to make the methodology interesting. Have subheadings and give numbers, arrange it in an order, have some sequence of arranging it. Wherever necessary, you please check whether the tables are matching with whatever we have set in the order. So researchers should organize it. So have some time to frame all the details and then start writing your methodology chapter. So data collection. The data collection is again the researcher has to spend much of the time. After spending much of the time in literature review framing methodology, data collection also will take much of the researcher's time. So to collect data, there are certain points that need to be considered. So while selecting the technique of data collection also, the researcher has to decide on the time, the budget which is in hand for him to spend on data collection. So the procedure of collecting data, the various sources that can help the researcher to collect data need to be analyzed well, and the proper data collection method should be finalized by the researcher. So in data collection chapter, the researcher is to collect data based on the hypothesis framed by him for the purpose of the research. Some do's while collecting data are ensure that you are collecting only the data which is very relevant to your research. and keep the data regularly updated. The data may be collected at different point of time from different people. So whenever it is collected, update the data and keep it ready for analysis, for the purpose of analysis. Clearly describe your data collection method in the chapter data collection and explain the methods through which you are going to analyze the data. You have to also explain the variables which were taken.
பாருக்கா சொல்றாரு பாரு அங்க பாரு கதை பாரு பாப்பா.
So explain the methods used to analyze the data. The variables which were considered for the data collection should also be mentioned. Some of the don'ts while collecting the data are do not collect more personal data which are irrelevant for the purpose of research. And do have your data collection period well planned. So proper planning of data collection will help you to minimize the time spent on data collection. Since data collection also will take much of the time of the researcher, proper planning needs to be done on the type of data collecting, on the ways through which the data are to be collected. There are many ways to collect data. Even the mobiles are nowadays helping the researcher to collect data. So while deciding on the method of collecting data, the device that can be used for collecting data needs to be well planned by the researcher. So the next chapter where the do's and don'ts need to be considered are writing results. So result will give the space for the researcher to give all his views, all his hard work can be explained and described in an elaborate way in the result area. So while writing the result, the researcher cannot write whatever they have find. So there should be some information that is very important that is to be mentioned in the area of results. So while writing the result, the researcher should collect all the relevant information that is to be given under results. Then the hypothesis frame, what is the results of the hypothesis, and what are all the details that will make the readers interesting to read it, and what are all the areas that will help for further research in the same topic. So while writing the result, data might be understood. So more visuals can be used, tables, figures can be used in writing the result. So instead of writing it in a descriptive way, results can have more number of tables with numbers, more graphs and figures. There may be some data which were collected by the researcher while data collection, which are irrelevant. Since it is collected by the researcher, it should not be given in the area of result, or it should not be taken into consideration for the purpose of analysis. So the complete data, which is very relevant, which will give the researcher to get some results, should only be taken into consideration. And instead of using the text here, the tables can be used. The tables should be properly numbered. The topic should be given for each and every table and for figures. And the data cannot be skipped. Whenever the results are being elaborated or explained in the research paper, it should be in an organized way. So if the results are being jumping from different figures, it will not be easy for the readers to read it. So there should be some order of arranging the tables also to make the readers easy to understand the context. So general tips from the do's and don'ts are use the past whenever give some results. It is based on the research that we have already done. So give the general tips. Whenever you present your result, use past tense. Make sure that the data, the numbers given are correct. So number your figures, number your table, clearly label all your figures and chapters, whatever you are giving in your results. So with that, I have covered all the do's and don'ts of various chapters what I have listed in my first slide. So with one take home message, or with one thing that I can make you all remember is, while writing a research paper, kindly do take care of different tense that can be used. So while writing abstract, use the past tense to talk about the result which you have gathered already. And when you are writing the introduction chapter, use the present tense to talk about the general background or the general information that are giving. And if you are giving the previous research talk about, then you give give it in present perfect tense. While writing the methodology chapter, when you are talking about the work which was already done, use past tense and explain all your diagrams and figures in present tense. When you are writing your results, when you talk about the actual result which you had already drawn, use past tense. To explain the diagrams, figures, you are giving it in the result chapter, do use the present tense. While writing the chapter discussion, to interpret and talk about the significance of findings in present tense and briefly summarizing it in past tense. On the conclusion chapter, since all your results are over and you are presenting it, do use past tense to refer your completed research. And to talk about the implication, or for you are suggesting some ways for the future research, do use the present tense. So with this, I complete my session. Thank you all for attending and for your patience listening.
Thank you so much, Aram ma'am. It was really a clear demarcation of what to do and what not to do in writing a research paper. If the participants is having any clarification, you are open. You can type your clarification on the chat box so that the resource person can look into and clarify your doubts. Participants, if you have any doubt, you can type it in the chat box. Thank you so much, Aram ma'am. Deepika, you can formally propose the vote of thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor to propose the vote of thanks for today's session. I would like to thank the Almighty for making today's session a success. I extend my gratitude to our speaker, Dr. Aram Malathanayagi, for taking the time to be part of the FDP series on journal writing and for sharing her knowledge and insights. I thank all the participants for taking the time out to attend today's session. A big thank you to our secretary and our associate secretary for their constant guidance and support. My special thanks to our principal and Vice Principal for giving us the encouragement we always need. Last but not the least, I would like to thank Dr. S.T. Deepa, our technical team, and our internal training team for all their support and coordination. Once again, I thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all for your patience listening.
Thank you so much. The feedback form is posted in the chat box. The participants can fill in the feedback form to receive your e-certificate. Thank you so much, Aram ma'am, for accepting our invitation and discussing your thoughts on do's and don'ts of your research paper. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.